Hey everyone,
Hello.
welcome back to Wicked Honest
True Crime
True
Fridays.
Crime Fridays.
Episode 5.
And we are still for, I don't know, for a very long time, going to be still talking about the 1992 murder of Susan Taraskiewicz. It's 27-year-old Saugus girl who was murdered and found in her trunk of her car, Boston Logan Airport worker in 1992. And we have a special treat today that we're going to get to. We promised you last episode we're going to have an attorney on to discuss a couple of things. But real quick, we're just going to do a quick disclaimer. This podcast discusses the unsolved murder of Susan Taraskiewicz. The information is from public records, reporting interviews, conversations with individuals connected to the case. No one has been charged or convicted, and everyone is innocent until presumed innocent until proven guilty.
It's a cold case.
Cold case over 30 years. We will change names. We already have changed names in some of this. Some people have given me permission to change their names. If they're not in public filings, I'm using my own judgment. I sometimes
To say their names.
they've given me permission, and I'm not sure. If they're not in public filings, I think I'm going to change them for now. What we're going to see, the book might be different. I'm writing a book on the case, working with 2 police officers who are giving me lots of information and guidance. And one, if not, hopefully both will be on the show at some point. And our goal is not to accuse anyone. We're just working this out, talking about it in real time. This is not one of these podcasts that's wrapped up in a bow. We're actively investigating
Kind of, yeah. That's
not
how it's
that we're
ending
law
up.
enforcement.
Yeah. But it's ending up like that because there's some things being uncovered and some, I'd say, leads, it's called almost.
Yeah.
And she has been in touch with the state police, or she has tried to get in touch with the state police multiple times and hasn't gotten a call back.
No avail.
To no avail, right? So we're doing our due diligence in the order, the order that it should go in, but we're just doing what we can at this point.
Yeah, we have a lot of information that's come in real fast, and I've taken a break from that. And I think we've taken a little pause on the investigative piece because I'm trying to catch up in the chapters with my book and on this show.
Yeah.
So we're going in sort of an order we created that we think makes sense, and we're going to break it all down. We'd love to hear your comments. We'd love you to like, subscribe. We'll talk more about that at the end of the show because we have someone backstage. Attorney Richard Cabelus. He's a very prominent Massachusetts attorney, an immigration and criminal lawyer. Also my brother. I was lucky he's offered to do this actually. So he's taking a moment from his busy day to come in and talk to us about a couple of things we left off with about the grand jury. We had some questions and a few other things while we have him here. So
hopefully he'll come back if
God, I know.
if we need
Hopefully he'll come back. So let's let him in
without further ado.
All
right, let's see.
Oh, there I am.
There you are.
So this is attorney Richard Cabelus and my brother. I told the audience that you're my brother as well.
I heard. I can hear you backstage.
Oh, you can?
Oh,
okay. This is new to us, this guest situation thing. So thank you for taking time out of your day to talk to us.
Good thing we didn't say anything bad about you.
We'll wait till after he gets
out. Yeah, we'll wait till you're not in the green room anymore.
Fair enough.
That's for Tuesday's show.
Yeah.
We're on True Crime Fridays. I told you that we have been working investigating and talking about the murder of Susan Taraskiewicz, correct?
That's right, yeah.
And you know a little bit about this case, not fully, but you grew up in Revere.
Yeah, I don't. It's funny when you talked about that billboard when I was talking to you the other day. I do remember being a kid and seeing that billboard all over Revere and Route 1 and the 4. And I didn't really put one and one together, but it did bring it back. I don't know that much about this case other than probably not nearly as much as you guys, but it's very interesting. I know that it was really something that greatly affected, I think, the Revere and the North Shore community, and the fact that it's still not solved is tragic. So it's good that you guys are doing this. So yeah, no, I do remember that. It brought back those memories when I was like 12 years old.
Yeah. Sue, I gave you a brief rundown and I think you know the gist of it. So she worked at Boston's Logan Airport at the same time that 1992, she was found in the trunk of her car in Revere. And she worked at Logan. There was a lot going on at Logan at the time that this happened. There was a credit card ring, a giant fraud, credit card fraud. They're stealing credit cards from the planes, over 7.5 million, or
$7.2 million.
$7.2 million dollars
In 92.
in 1992.
Yeah.
So, and this was 37 workers at Boston's Logan Airport and 10 from baggage, which Sue was the supervisor. She became the first female supervisor of the ramp at Northwest, which was a big deal. And a lot of men did not like this. And she was a real by the book person. So the credit card stuff was happening. That was all kind of coming to a head right before she got murdered. A lot of heat on, people were getting talked to. And then at this harassment, she would file grievances with the union. She was a real by the book type person and all that.
Yeah, there was proven harassment against her a lot. So when you're the supervisor of the section of the airport that this credit card ring is running through, and then indictments are starting to come down, and the FBI is starting to get, you try to look at where's the leaky.
Yeah, who might talk?
Yeah,
so
where's the leak? So
and the feds have always denied that she talked, but that doesn't mean anything. There was a lot of talk that she might have said something and all that, or suspicion of thereof.
but yeah, right. Even just them believing that she would
Yeah, sure.
at some point.
So we left off last show. We wanted to ask you a couple questions about a grand jury. I know you practice, I said you do criminal law as well as immigration. And a grand jury, in 1995, a grand jury went out for the murder. And there was already a grand jury for the credit card ring. There was indictments, charges, people went to prison, all of that. In 95, a murder grand jury came out and an investigative grand jury. Can you tell us the difference between a regular grand jury and an
Yeah, I'm going to
investigative?
interrupt. Sorry,
Okay.
I'm going to interject. I was always under the impression that a grand jury was basically to figure out whether or not the prosecutors had enough to charge you with. So basically, you get picked up for a crime. They have all this evidence against you. It's presented to a grand jury. The grand jury decides whether or not there's enough for an indictment, and then you're indicted from there, and then you go to trial or whatever happens to you after that. But this grand jury, there was no subject. It was an investigative grand jury. So we were really like, what is that? Like, I've never heard of that. Not that I would for any reason, but.
Okay. I mean, yeah, there is a difference. I mean, an investigative grand jury is a little bit less common than a regular grand jury. I mean, the purpose of the grand jury is to decide whether or not there's probable cause generally to issue an indictment, or if they don't decide there's probable cause, then they come back with what's called no true bill.
Right.
And then nothing, no indictment issues, and that sort of ends it there. So, I mean, generally how it usually works in a general grand jury is, it's the case is presented one side, the prosecutor presents their theory of the case, and they can call witnesses, and the defense or the target of the investigation is not even notified or not required or welcome to be present. So I know a few people have served on grand juries, and there was an old justice of the New York Supreme Court that said years ago, a grand jury can indict a ham sandwich.
Yep.
That is a lot of truth to that. So, but an investigative grand jury, I guess one good example of that is like Kenneth Starr.
Oh, no.
We lost you.
Wait, you
Was
came
these
back?
to investigate Bill Clinton, which began in the Whitewater investigation. And so the grand jury there kind of works arm in arm with the investigator to decide if this, subpoena should issue, or if this or certain things should happen in the investigation. And just they kind of work together to investigate whether or not there's any wrongdoing. So it started off in Whitewater, which was like an Arkansas real estate deal, and it ended up with Monica Lewinsky in a blue dress. So, I mean, that's sort of, it's not as frequently used. I can't say that, that it's not somewhat common, but generally not as frequently used. But I guess it was used in this case, and I don't know what happened, if it sputtered out, so to speak, and they decided that there was no reasonable suspicion to pursue other avenues, and then the case just unfortunately kind of fizzled. But that's
So
kind of.
So if I'm understanding you correctly, not to interrupt you, sorry, they could bring in 5 different avenues that they want to go down and present those to the grand jury? Or is this what they're only looking at, an investigative grand jury, they're only looking at one person?
No, they can present, I mean,
multiple.
Yeah, of course. I mean, anything that's probative in value to discovering wrongdoing. There's no, it's the evidentiary standard of relevance, what can be presented in front of a grand jury, is much more broad than what could be ultimately admitted in a court of law.
Yeah.
I mean, so it's there are the exceptions to hearsay evidence and things like that are much more broadly construed, and there's much more leeway given, especially in these type of grand juries. And the need for corroborating evidence sometimes is not always there. So yeah, no, they have broad latitude and broad discretion to go down whatever avenue they see fit, as long as there's some probative value that it's going to uncover wrongdoing and lead to potentially discoverable and admissible evidence.
Do they, in summoning a grand jury, because it did seem like they were really focused on one suspect for a time, and then they had this investigative grand jury. Do they have to, in order to have a grand jury go out on someone, do you still have to prove something to the court, a judge or something, to have this grand jury at all, to focus on one person? Do you have to
Yeah, there has to be
prove
something
evidence?
provable.
Yeah,
You said like,
Something. Otherwise you'd get into I don't know if there's any threshold gatekeeper that the court would have in order for a prosecutor to convene a grand jury, whether it be a regular, or to present a case in front of a grand jury or to have an investigative grand jury. The prosecutor has to have some rational basis or some reasonable suspicion of wrongdoing. If it was just an absolute total fishing expedition,
right.
then you're not getting into so much that you couldn't. There's no gatekeeper, as far as I'm aware, that you couldn't bring that in front of the court. But you'd be looking at you'd be going into ethical violations.
Right.
You can't just being recklessly a grand jury without a pillar of evidence or some sort of rational basis to do so. It'd be violating, rules of professional conduct, really.
okay.
So basically, like, if they liked this person for it and this person was involved in the harassment, that would be enough, to be honest with you, because that gives motive or something.
Yeah,
It seems like it's pretty lenient, and there's enough going on at the time that you could pick one of the small things out and
maybe
use
there
it.
was multiple, I do think that they thought there was multiple players involved in this, so that might have been maybe the investigative approach. So, but the second question I wanted to ask you, I know you're busy, is if someone was going to talk, and we have, through a confidential informant that we have heard that someone was speaking with some knowledge of what happened in this case. I'm not going to get into the extent of what, but if someone wanted to talk and they wanted immunity in this case, or any case for that matter, did they, in a murder, in this crime, like Sue, she's a Logan Airport worker, a young girl, obviously they're gonna want state immunity to speak, because the state handles the murder, the homicide, correct?
Generally, that's not generally a homicide. It's a state offense. Doesn't always have to be, but yes, generally murder is a police power of the state and is prosecuted by the state, but not always.
So in this case, there was also the credit card fraud too. That was multiple people involved. So why would someone, if they wanted to speak, want state and federal immunity?
Sure. Yeah. And I'll answer that. But let me go back one more thing about why I think if I had to guess why in this case an investigative grand jury was convened, because you're talking about potential aspect. You guys are investigating possible aspects of public corruption, right?
Yeah.
Right.
There's I think there was thoughts of that.
Right. So, and whenever there's some sort of potential aura of impropriety in sort of a police force or a public official or some sort of public corruption, that's commonly when you see these types of grand juries, because it helps the prosecutor show independence in the investigation. So in other words, you're having a neutral, impartial, impaneled grand jury that's not also a public official.
That makes a lot of sense.
Okay, interesting.
It's kind of like, look, this is not us doing this. This is we're trying to
guard in the hen house. It gives
transparency.
Too, because they're in a tough spot. They're investigating people that maybe 6 degrees of separation that they know, and they can say, hey, well, I brought the case, the grand jury issued the subpoenas, and it helps them maintain the cloak of impartiality. So that's when you most commonly see these types of grand juries. So that's probably why it was convened in this case. And it also tells you the motive behind convening it, shows that the U.S. Attorney's Office obviously thought, at least to some extent, there might have been some public corruption going on here. So I
Okay.
can't say that unequivocally, but that's usually when you see these things. So, so when you go to the other question you have, I mean, yeah, of course, and if you're going to get, the state and the federal government, don't always work in tandem. Actually, most times they don't. And some of the things I do in my job to some degree of success is I know when and where they don't play in tandem, and you can sometimes play them off each other. So it actually works out.
Don't give away your secrets there.
No, I'll leave it there. But anyway, so yeah, if you're granted state immunity, that would grant you potential immunity from that the state could not prosecute you. The state can't speak for the federal government. The federal government can't speak for the state government. And that's why we have separation of powers. And when you're talking just credit card fraud and all these things that sound like Lufthansa heist and something out of a Scorsese movie, which is crazy. You're getting into doesn't seem to be just a tragically just a domestic murder or a domestic situation. So you're getting into, I could see very clearly where you'd have potential federal question as far as whether or not be RICO, which states have their own RICO laws, but the feds passed the first one in 1970. And
Can you just explain
Yeah,
RICO real quick for
yeah.
the layperson in layman's terms?
And me.
well, I mean, that's just one. I mean, felony murder would be another one. So in other words, if someone's if there's a murder and in the process of the murder, this a felony committed, but like in a credit card fraud would be obviously wire fraud, mail fraud. That's a federal offense. So you'd have, and if there's a murder created in the furtherance of a felony, then you could have felony murder charges in the federal court. So you wouldn't have where you might have state immunity. The U.S. attorney would be full free to prosecute you. So it would be foolhardy to have one and not the other. But as if you were somebody who needed such immunity, and then the RICO Act was passed in 1970 federally, but it didn't really begin to. It's called the Racketeer Influence Corrupt Organizations Act, and people throw it around. And it wasn't really used for the first 10 years. And as you guys, people probably know Rudy Giuliani, when he was appointed the U.S. attorney for the Southern District, New York, under Reagan in the early 80s, began to use that to prosecute the New York Mafia, and to great success. And basically, it's extremely broad, and it's been upheld by the Supreme Court. And basically, if you're in furtherance of some sort of organized corruption, some organization that works in tandem is sort of in racketeering, anything that organization does, if you are a member of that organization, you could be charged under it. And you can be even years after you've left that organization. I think you have to leave the organization for several years, which is why they tried to get John Gotti Jr. I think after he served prison time, they re-indicted him, saying that he was under RICO, saying he was still a member of the Gambino family, and that the Gambino family was still racketeering in New York, and they were going to try to bring him back under that. So it's an extremely broad federal statute that, really, and the states have their own version of it. So you could, based on the facts that you present, RICO could be at play here too.
Okay, so that's the safe bet, is you want both.
Yeah. So just to dumb it down, not to dumb it down, I don't mean to use that expression, but to kind of bring it back to the layperson. If there's a situation in which she's murdered, and that's one felony charge, obviously, state charge, and there's something else going on, like the credit card ring that's happened and be going on at the same time, and you're involved in both, you could face federal charges through RICO.
Yes, but you also, like you said, you could also face felony murder. They can charge
They can charge you with the federal can charge you with the murder as well.
Yeah, because there's some other charge that the feds are under, like mail fraud.
Right. Okay.
Which the credit card, that was what they got charged. The people all involved in the credit card rings were charged with mail fraud and felony.
Yeah. So you would want, if you were going to come forward and you knew something about this and you were putting yourself at some kind of risk, you would want immunity from both the federal and the state side.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, if I was a client, I certainly would advise that.
Okay.
And last question, I think. So I thought this would be interesting, and I think this is great for just lots of cases. So obviously, lots of cases have rewards that are out there. Unsolved cases have rewards. In this case, Northwest did offer a $250,000 reward for any information on this case, that Delta absorbed Northwest Airlines, and they're still honoring this reward. I don't know the real details of the reward, if it's a reward that is, if has to lead, usually they're to lead to an arrest or a conviction, I'm assuming, and well, from what I've heard in most rewards. But I wanted to ask you if a client or someone ever came to your office and said, hey, look, I have information on this case, I'm interested in this reward, what do you as an attorney then go do with that?
I don't know. I mean, that's the usual attorney answer. It depends. I mean, my number one goal is to protect the interests of my client. So I want to make sure that my client is not doing anything that would incriminate him or herself or put her or him at risk, and
Yeah.
advise them of the risks and benefits of coming forward and trying to claim that benefit, that reward. You're obviously, how do you know this information? How long ago did you acquire it? Did you have a duty to disclose it? And most people don't generally, but maybe there was some, and you didn't disclose it, which could then lead to liability to you. It depends. I mean, that obviously you're going to make yourself a witness when any witness is open to cross-examination. If you're going to be a witness and subject yourself to cross-examination, then what could you possibly be impeached with, and what could you possibly be exposed to, is by putting yourself out there. So there's a lot of things to balance. I mean, obviously you like to think good Samaritans just come forward irrespective of any financial reward, but you have to, especially with something this serious, obviously, that person has this information, has been holding it for so long. I mean, I imagine there's some gravity that's going to come to reckon when they come forward, I would suspect. So you'd have to just weigh all those myriad of factors, and then that's possibly others. So it would not be taken lightly, that's for sure.
And then if they do still go forward and everything is okay, and then as an attorney, I never even thought about this, and someone brought it up, and this is why I'm asking you. If you were going to go just talk to law enforcement and you were interested in the reward, I would get an attorney, because you want to make sure that, as all the things you just said,
Yeah.
but also you want to be acknowledged that you said all of this in cooperation to get this reward, so you do end up actually getting the reward if it meets all the criteria. And if you didn't have an attorney, I'm not sure that I mean, I'm not saying people aren't honest, but sometimes maybe that might not happen.
Yeah, and I really wonder if we do have to research this a little bit more about what the stipulations on the reward are. Does there need to be a conviction for you to retain this award? Like that's
I
a
feel like
huge
most of them
factor.
are arrest and conviction, but
And that's a private thing. It would depend on whoever's posting it.
yeah, we'll
Try to research that. I had another question. You said in the grand jury, sometimes the focus of the investigation isn't even privy to the grand jury, or they're not invited to be there. Wasn't there was a person that refused to speak?
Oh, yes.
But he's saying, and now that he's saying that, I remember, you don't even have to be, you're not even sometimes present at the grand jury when you're the subject of it.
I think that's the general rule.
Yeah. So where
There
was
was-
this?
Well, you have a grand jury, and then they call people in to testify. And then there was someone that has been said from my confidential informant that was requested to testify, came in with an attorney and refused to testify. He can refuse to testify at a grand jury? I mean, I've not. that
Only
was not-
only if you have a privilege, I would imagine.
Yeah,
I mean,
only like a marital, right? Like if you were married, you could invoke your marital privilege.
if there's a Fifth Amendment privilege, a spousal privilege, a therapist privilege,
Be a Fifth Amendment privilege is must used.
Interesting.
the general rule. I mean, otherwise, if you're subpoenaed, you're generally compelled to testify unless you have.
Yeah, I'm not sure what happened there, but that was what was said. But
And then I guess my only last question is, if you were given state immunity, as if you were speaking, if you were talking at some point during the early investigation times and you were given state immunity, and you really wanted, in order to really go all the way with the facts that you knew, wanted federal immunity, the federal, as we were just talking about, sometimes the federal and state don't work so great together, and they don't really care about the feds may not care about your what you have going on and they just refuse to give it. But if it's going to solve a case, is it, I mean,
You would hope so. I mean, if it would, and you'd like to think that at least at the end, overarchingly, all of these agencies are in the interest of justice. So if it's going to solve a case, you would like to think that the federal government would would also extend immunity. But sometimes just these bureaucratic giants just have a hard time getting on the same page with things, or it just takes so long and the bureaucratic minutia just grinds it all to a halt. But yeah, I mean, you'd like to think that if that was the only thing holding back a potential break in the case, and you had a witness that the state really thought was credible, and and that they could really open an old case with it, but the guy was reluctant to talk unless he was granted federal immunity as well. And yeah, you'd like to think that in the interest of justice, a prosecutor would work really diligently to get what was needed to
right.
get him to talk. You'd like to think that happens, and I'm sure it does many times, but sometimes, unfortunately, these things just sort of don't work in tandem as much as we'd like.
Yeah, that's unfortunate.
It is.
We know you're really busy, so we are going to let you go, but we do want to have you on, and I did send you a file, and at some point in the future, there is a whole U.S. versus Robert Brooks that I sent you to whenever you get a chance to look over, because we want to get a deep dive into that crazy shenanigans of that whole court case and what happened there, because it's pretty wild when you get a chance to read it. I think you're going to be really interested in that. And Robert Brooks was convicted in the credit card ring, the harassment. He had connections with Sue, heavily involved in this case, public records all over the place. So
Okay, yeah, no, I know you did send that, and I'll definitely take a look at it. And then, yeah, no, I appreciate you guys having me on. It looks like
thanks for joining us.
You have some homework to do, Attorney Cabelus.
all right. I'll
Bye.
catch up.
Have a good day.
Bye.
All right, take care. Bye-bye.
All right.
All right. Well, that was Attorney Cabelus, guys.
I know that was interesting.
Yeah, that was interesting. That answered a lot of questions that I know for us when we're going through some of the more legal side of things will be a lot clearer now when we're presenting them.
Yeah, and I think we have a baseline knowledge of certain things, but then sometimes you're like, you're speaking and I'm going, do I even know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, well, grand juries and RICO laws and things like that. I mean, I think a general knowledge is, I think even a layperson that doesn't really follow some cases wouldn't know any. I wouldn't have known any of that if I.
Well, I thought it was incredibly interesting that he said an investigative grand jury is called often if there's any thought of maybe public corruption, possibly. And in this case, we have found, and it will come out a couple of times, and I think we've already discussed it a little bit, and I was going to get into it a little bit more coming up very shortly, that there's been, as Attorney Cabela said, 6 degrees of separation between some public figures and some people involved in this.
Yeah.
So I find that really interesting that they use investigative grand juries.
It's actually really enlightening to hear that, because you don't have so much trust in the justice system. You don't have so much trust in sometimes if you've been through something that you were done wrong by the legal system or whatever, you may not have trust in the legal system or the cops or whatever it may be. But doing a general grand jury where they're trying to say, look, we're being transparent here. This isn't us convicting. We're letting the general public.
It's not a prosecutor going, I'm going after this.
Yeah.
Law
The
enforcement
prosecutor is someone's brother.
Yeah, it's
You know.
it's non-biased, so
Yeah.
it's when otherwise it could just look biased, or a witch hunt or something.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought that was really interesting, and I'm kind of like, I'm gonna like really sit with that for a little bit.
Yeah.
So I think that took up a good amount of time, and I know the last episode we left off with Fred and that whole relationship and broke that down a lot and talked about the grand jury, and then we touched on John, this relationship that was the last relationship before Sue met her end. And I think we should just maybe end here and get into John next episode.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to get into a little bit of that 6 degrees of separation too. Let's talk about, so you can subscribe.
Yes, definitely, please.
Let's get this case, like we said, get some traction out here. Sue
Yeah.
deserves justice, and more people who watch, share, comment. This is what gets the algorithm in YouTube
Yep.
going.
TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. or X now. We're on all those platforms. If you have a membership to any of them, subscribe to the channel. If you don't have a membership, get a membership. They're free on all of them. You subscribe and then like and comment, share. It needs viewer engagement in order to survive, not just views.
Yeah, North Shore people, come on, step it up. Come on, will you? This Sue is a North Shore girl. We're North Shore girls. Like, and this is a, you know, as I say, a stain on the community. And I think there's a lot of outcry for justice here. And
Yeah.
and
now-
let's get talking about it.
And now that we know how to have people on,
I know if it works.
we will look into having some more people on. Hopefully we'll have,
We're gonna have Joe,
Joe.
one of the officers involved. We're gonna have hopefully a couple of people, and if any, maybe some people are willing to come on and talk. And there are some people talking. Showing your face is a different animal.
and they don't have to show their face either.
No, we can actually block that out too, and I think you can even change the voice too.
Yeah.
So yes, and also in the show notes, if you want to support, there's a link to support the show. We are boots on the ground. We are doing a lot of work, and this takes a lot of work in doing this. So we'd appreciate that. Like, subscribe, comment, and then every month we're doing a giveaway. If you want to talk about that.
Yep. But right now it's Dunkin' Donuts giveaway. Well, and then we will go live to announce the winner, but you have to be subscribed to the channel. So it's a new subscriber to the channel. After you watch an episode that you like and comment on it, and we will do a random drawing once a month, and hopefully keep that engagement going on.
Get your Dunkin'.
Yeah.
Boston runs on Dunkin'.
I know. Geez, they should sponsor us.
I don't drink it though.
I do. I do.
Everyone does. I used to. I think I was addicted to it, but no. Yeah. So Dunkin' Donuts, we already did our first one last month.
Yep.
And we subscribe. We want to share. We want to engage with you. We want to give you some Dunkin' Donuts coffee. And so that's it. See us Tuesdays for Wicked Honest regular show. That's a little wacky and just easy going.
Yeah.
No attorneys. If he does come on that show, we will make fun of him, or vice versa.
Yeah. If he comes on that show, it'll be to discuss 90210.
Yes, Attorney Cabelus also enjoys the Beverly Hills 90210.
Yeah.
It's one of his favorite shows. I'm sure he'll appreciate that.
Yeah, he'll love that. He'll love that.
And we can do trivia on Tuesdays. Show.
Yeah, he's good. He's actually really good.
He's smart at it's very annoying. Do you hear him speak? He's smart at everything.
Yeah, I know, it is annoying.
You can give him any date in history and he'll just tell you something.
He's like, in 1982, I'm like, in 90, please, whatever.
And then 90210, he knows there's not one certain thing. He can quote anything from a movie. It's very annoying. But so we'll have him on for that kind of stuff on the other show.
Yeah, the other side. Yep. So we'll see you on Tuesday. And then hopefully then again on Friday for episode 6. And we'll keep on going.
Yeah. And cheers to Sue.
And staying alive.
Staying alive.
All right.
Thanks, guys.
See you later.
Bye.